Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Office Hours with Michael Kitces. So I wanted to talk today about DoL Fiduciary and some unintended consequences that I think are going to come from DoL Fiduciary. Or frankly, a better label for this is probably not unintended consequences, but maybe secondary effects. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the context, when you have an earthquake, damage from an earthquake is kind of characterized into primary effects. Primary effects are things like there was an earthquake and buildings fell down. And then there's sort of the collateral damage, what's called the secondary effects. And the secondary effect of an earthquake might be the earthquake also knocks some power cables loose, which fall down and cause a fire. And then the fire turns out to be way worse than anyone expected because they can't put the fire out because the water mains also broke in the earthquake. So it's not kind of the direct damage from the earthquake, it's the secondary knock-on effects that happen because of the primary damage as it ripples outwards. And I think we're going to start seeing soon some of the secondary effects that crop up from the DoL fiduciary rule. Now, we've already started talking a little about the primary effects. So primary effects, this isn't new for me talking about it. Clearly more pressure on commission-based products. Doesn't necessarily bar them, but certainly DoL has put a whole lot of additional scrutiny for companies to justify commissions. There's a lot of pressure to go level fees. That particularly impacts a subset of products that historically have had larger upfront commissions, from non-traded REITs, variable annuities, indexed annuities, actively managed mutual funds, which now increasingly are going to get pushed towards institutional class shares that maybe can get held in a wrap account or with an RIA. All sorts of pressures on broker-dealers themselves, which historically were basically distributors or intermediaries for products. And so as we go from a less product-centric world to a more advice-centric world where you don't necessarily have the same scope of commissions, not entirely clear what the function is for the broker-dealer. So I think the broker-dealers have to go through a bit of a reinvention themselves. But what I want to talk about today is not just the impacts on sort of these primary effects, what happens to annuity products and active funds and other commission-based products. I want to talk about secondary effects. And to me, one of the most interesting secondary effects that we're going to start seeing from DoL Fiduciary is not just some of these companies and their products that start pulling back, but the fact that they advertise. So if you actually think about it for a moment, think about when you are an advisor. Yes, exactly, Bill. When you are an advisor and you're at a conference, think about who you see in that booth, exhibit halls. When you're on one of our trade publications in the industry, when you're on their website or you get their emails, what do you see? What are the ads? Who are the advertisers? If you think about it, a lot of those ads are non-traded REITs, variable annuities, indexed annuities, active funds, broker-dealers, the same companies we just put on the list of people who are threatened by DoL Fiduciary. Now, I don't necessarily think that all of those products are going to vanish completely, but if membership associations and trade publications are built primarily on the backs of advertising revenues and conference spending for a whole bunch of product providers that are in the crosshairs of DoL Fiduciary, what happens to their advertising spends when suddenly the products start getting reined back a little? Now, I had actually warned about this last year when I wrote about some of the dynamics going on for the Financial Planning Association in particular. I kind of warned, the FPA may have kind of set itself up for a massive business challenge going forward because the organization, as many membership associations, is very reliant on advertising revenue from its conferences. And of course, now conferences may see a significant pullback in advertising dollars. And the companies are going to have to, spends will come back. Membership associations are going to suffer. And I think trade publications will go through the same thing. The ones we all regularly read, Financial Planning, Financial Advisor, Think Advisor, Investment News, all those leading trade publications. Again, think about when you go to their sites or when you get the emails with their stuff, what do you see? Lots of active funds, lots of broker-dealers, lots of annuity products, non-traded REITs, all the things that are most likely to be at least short-term disrupted by DoL Fiduciary. And I'm actually starting to hear some rumors that this is happening already, that a couple of companies, a couple of these groups, as they're looking at advertising activity and conference activity in second quarter, now coming into the third quarter here, that they're already seeing a little bit of the pullback begin. And frankly, I think it's going to get much, much worse through the end of the year before it gets better here. There's still a lot of companies that were already committed to advertising spends and already committed to certain conferences. When they start making new decisions from here and they look at where they want to spend dollars, if you're not sure if your product is going to exist in 9 months, you don't do a big advertising spend this fall. You dial all your dollars back, you go back to your product design people, you figure out how you're going to redesign the thing to see if it can survive in the future, and then we revisit it. So yes, might not see so many golf balls and swag at conferences coming up in the next couple of months here. Now, there are actually some interesting silver linings to this. One of the most positive effects that I think will come out of this in the short term, I hope sticks for the long term, it opens the door for a new range of companies to advertise. One of my longstanding gripes, a few of you have heard me talk about this before, when I go to a conference and I look around at who's in that exhibit hall, what I see is almost no one that's there to actually give me solutions, and almost everybody is there because they want my client's money. Think about that for a moment. Who do you see at a conference? How much advertising is chasing the money we oversee and are responsible for our clients, right? That they have products they want us to invest in. They have insurance and annuity solutions they want us to buy. They're a broker, dealer, or custodian that they want us to house the money on their platform. How rare is it that you actually go to a conference and see solutions for the advisor's business, like for our business, to make us more successful, not just different things to sell and implement with our clients, but stuff that's actually for us as advisors. And I mean, the reality is the companies don't have a lot of choice. When you look at how most conferences are structured, they have one pricing schedule. Here's the cost of a booth. So the most successful practice management consultant, a fintech firm, and an asset manager with $100 billion under management all pay the same conference rate. So what ends up happening? $100 billion asset managers knock out all the consultants, all the practice management assistants, all the fintech tools, everything that would help our businesses be more successful as advisors gets crowded out by the big dollars chasing our clients' dollars. The conference world has had a huge failure to segment its pricing for different markets, and sadly has crowded out a lot of solutions for us. So when a lot of these companies start pulling back their advertising dollars, right, the annuity companies, some active funds, non-traded REITs, some broker dealers, when they dial back, at least over the next year, trying to figure out what their company's going to be in the future, it opens the door for new companies to advertise. So I'm actually excited about this to see who comes forward to start advertising. Like, what solutions are out there that we've never heard of? I try to highlight a lot of new things for all of you on Nerd's Eye View, but what new things are going to come forward that we haven't even seen because they couldn't afford the advertising until all the advertisers that had the big dollars pull back after DoL Fiduciary? Now, the bad news for conferences and trade publications is we still have this pricing gap. The companies that provide solutions for advisors just cannot pay the same advertising rates as asset managers, product manufacturers, broker dealers, and those organizations, because they're just different in size and scale by an order of magnitude. Like, no fintech startup firm that has an amazing solution for advisors can possibly pay what $100 billion platform pays in the asset management world. They just do not have the same budgets, and they never will. So what you're going to see is an interesting shift in advertising, shift in sponsors, and lots of pressure on conferences and trade publications that are going to have excess inventory, i.e. booths that don't sell, ads they can't sell. So watch for ads from publications that are advertising their own stuff. It's called a house ad. It's what they fill in when they couldn't get anybody to buy it. You're going to see a big explosion of those over the next couple of months. Now, ironically, in the long run, I think you're actually going to see this reverse completely. Because I've talked about this before, but DoL Fiduciary ultimately forces companies to back away from distributing based on commissions, right? We'll get our product out there by paying the best commissions. And instead, if you want to distribute a product fiduciaries, you have to actually be a good product. Ideally, you have to be the best product, right? The optimal marketing strategy in a fiduciary world is just actually be the best product for the client. And then all the advisors will be legally compelled to use you because you're the best solution. So we've shifted from who can pay the best commissions to something that looks a lot more like a bona fide meritocracy. Let the best products win for fiduciaries. Now, the challenge there is we don't necessarily quite automatically use the best product as an advisor because there's a lot of products. I only have so much time for due diligence and I can't be aware of everything that exists at once, right? The fiduciary rule technically says you don't literally have to give the best possible product on the planet for your client. You have to give a prudent product that a similar expert would have recommended in similar circumstances. But it does elevate the high quality products, but it also means that if you've got a high quality product, you still have to advertise. You have to get the word out. You have to explain, like, hey, you may have known us for some other products in the past, but we've got this new product. It's ultra low cost. It's fee-based. We can work with all sorts of new advisors. We're completely DoL fiduciary compliant. You got to be able to advertise that. You got to be able to message that. You got to get the word out, which means what we're ultimately going to see down the road, I think, is actually a massive resurgence of dollar spending on conferences and trade publications as companies come forward after the DoL dust is settled and say, we've made a brand new, awesome fiduciary-centric product. We got to get it out there, right? If you think of a profession like the medical industry, where doctors are not paid by drug companies directly, we force that separation. But you go to a doctor conference, holy cow, if you've never been to one, the amount of advertising that happens from drug companies trying to get visibility to doctors because you have to actually demonstrate your product is good and reach the doctors who get a lot of inbound calls. Massive advertising spending that goes on. So I think you'll actually see a big resurgence of this, but it's going to take some time. So your Q3, Q4 here coming up, I think it's going to get really bad for publications and conferences. Conferences may be okay because a lot of them actually booked vendors earlier in the year for booths if they're gearing up at the end of the year. But you're probably going to see a slowdown. Trade publications, I think, are going to see a big slowdown. The organizations and the publications that are most RIA-centric will probably fare the best. So RIA Biz and NAPFA are looking a whole lot better than most other trade publications and conferences, respectively, simply because the RIA space has the least change, the least disruption. The major advertisers there, including the big custodians, Schwab, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, Pershing Advisor Solutions, are impacted the least by this. So the RIA community is probably most sheltered. The rest, including all the publications and conferences that reach them, lots of slowdown coming in Q3, Q4. And frankly, I think it probably gets worse in 2017 because a lot of these companies are still committed to their dollars right now because they budgeted back last year. At the end of 2016, a lot of these companies will do their budgeting for 2017, and their budgeting is going to say, I don't even know what the heck we're selling until we get after the DoL fiduciary rule in April. In fact, we may not even be certain by then because there's a half a dozen lawsuits against DoL fiduciary, and companies may wait on their marketing spends to see how the lawsuit settles out. So the whole year of 2017, I think, is going to be really rough for conferences and for trade publications. By the time we get to 2018, I think the resurgence happens, but it's going to be new leaders. It's going to be new products that emerge. It's entirely possible that some of today's leading advertisers, those names that you see most often in the big pop-up ads that take up your whole screen, I'm not going to pick on any companies by name, but you know who they are. They may not even be doing that in a year. They may shift their businesses. They may focus elsewhere. Other companies will come in and take over those new full-page ads. Unfortunately, they're probably not going to go away as much as I hate them, and I know a lot of you hate them. But it's going to be a rotation. And what that means is, in the near term, lots of pressure on trade publications and conferences. And frankly, I think the space is too crowded already. One of the reasons I do weekend reading for all of you is because I know, and I've heard from you because I've experienced it as well, the number of emails we get from articles is overwhelming. So I try to give you the focus list. Likewise, I make the best conferences list because there's so many conferences out there. It's hard to pick them and figure out which ones to go to. I think in 2017, you're going to see a lot of them falter. The advertising dollars are going to shrink away while everybody figures out how to reposition for a fiduciary future. And a lot of conferences are going to get slaughtered, and a lot of trade publications are going to suffer. Some of the smaller ones may vanish. We'll see who survives. But I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation coming in that space next year. Now, again, ultimately, in the long run, I think you're actually going to see a new wave of advertising, unlike anything we've ever seen before, when everybody makes their DoL Fiduciary compliant meritocracy product and gets it out there. But between now and then, kind of an unintended secondary consequence, right? The Department of Labor was going after advisors, making sure that they're actually selling products in the best interest of their clients. But unwittingly, that secondary effect is when you take some of those highest expense products, one of the reasons they were high expense is they spent lots of money on advertising, trade publications, and conference booths. And when the costs get squeezed out, that's one of the groups that suffers. And I'm not even sure it's on their radar screen right now, but it's going to show up soon. So I hope that's helpful as just some food for thought, maybe an angle around DoL Fiduciary you hadn't heard or hadn't been thinking about, but I think we're going to start noticing soon. Sorry again for the late start here. This was Office Hours with Michael Kitces. We are normally 1 p.m. East Coast time on Tuesdays. I should probably call it After Hours with Michael Kitces today, since it's about 10 o'clock at night here East Coast time where I'm recording, but wanted to get something out today. Actually thrilled to see so many of you joined late in the evening here. But thanks for hanging out with me, and have a great day, everyone.